Hi, everyone. This is Mary Long with the Plenary Painters Chicago, and this is another one of our video chats with our guest artists. This time, we're going to be talking with Errol Jacobson, who is going to be our guest artist on June 1st. We'll be at Hubbard and Desplains, a wonderful urbanscape, which is one of Errol's fortes. Hi, Errol.
Hi, Mary. How are you?
Good. Thanks for being here today.
My pleasure.
Well, I think we're going to have fun. I know that these video chats are about getting to know you. And over the last few years, as I've been part of the Plenary Painters Chicago, I've just really appreciated you and the group and encouraging all of us. And I felt very encouraged to keep on working. So thanks so much for your time today.
Great. Thanks.
So I'm just going to jump right in. And I'm just going to ask you, what brought you to plein air?
So what brought me to plein air is in 2000, I've been painting for a lot of years, but in 2005, I sort of rebooted my my education and my painting and became more serious about it. I started taking classes at the Palette and Chisel. And in 2006, I was in a class and I heard these other students talking about going out and painting outside on Saturdays, and which I know now to be plein air, which I didn't even know existed back in 2006. I knew that Van Gogh and Monet and the Impressionists painted outside, but that was about the extent of it. I thought people didn't do it any longer. So that was when I first heard about it, and that there was a group of painters in Chicago painting plein air. Then a fortuitous event happened in my life. I was having lunch at Penny's Noodles, and I saw a table with 8 or 9 people, and they had all this equipment and all these paintings, and they were all talking, having a good time. I went over and introduced myself and told them that I was an artist, and they told me that they go out every Saturday and paint, and I now know them to be the Plein Air Painters of Chicago. And I was at that time talking to Scott Tallman Powers, who was the founder, and they invited me to come out with them. So I didn't go out with them right away. My partner, Stephanie Widener, who you know, who's a painter also, we decided that we were going to go to one of their paint outs, but not paint, but just kind of like go around, look at their equipment, see what they have, what they do, because we felt a little insecure about going out and painting for the first time. About, are we good enough? Are they going to laugh at us? What are we? Well, who are we to go out and paint in public? And all those different insecurities. So we thought we'd go out and just see what it's about, and talk to a few people. I remember talking to Nancy King Mertz in particular. She was very nice, and talking about her setup. And so we did that, and we still didn't go out with a group. We actually went out on our own. Stephanie and I, we took our big old French easels, and it was a cold March or April day. We went to North Pond, and the wind was blowing, and we were trying to set up. There was no bathrooms, and my fingers were iced up.
The
And
plein air experience.
yeah, that's plein air, and not only that part of it, but then we had to figure out how to do a painting, and it was more difficult than we thought. And that was our first experience in plein air. It wasn't a very good experience. We weren't very successful at it, but we kind of caught the bug. Then we started going out with the group, the Plein Air Painters of Chicago, who would go out every Saturday, rain or shine, snow, cold, what. And we went out every Saturday with them for years. and Scott at that time lived in Chicago, and he would line up all the paintings after everybody painted. And he was so generous and so knowledgeable and so good at critiquing each painting. And not only did he critique, we get information and valuable information about our own painting, but we listened to each and every other critique going on for every other painting. And it was just like being in college almost. I mean, it was our art school. And we learned so much about plein air painting, composition, perspective, you name it, and so we continued going out with them, right after, right on, we continued on, and gradually our paintings got a little better and better and better, and that was in 2006. So I've been painting plein air for 13 years.
Oh, that's great. And where does plein air fit with your bigger body of work as an artist?
Yeah. So My larger body of work, it's a very important component of my work. Um, I feel that without plein air, my work wouldn't be where it is today. It was so valuable. It is still valuable. I don't quite paint as much plein air as I used to. I don't go out as often. I'm in the studio quite a bit. Most of my work that I submit to galleries and shows is larger studio pieces or more intricate studio pieces. And as you know, I paint mostly urban city scenes. And but plein air is so important because without plein air, I wouldn't be able to have the knowledge to interpret the photographs that I paint off of in a manner that is naturalistic. They look more like photographs because
Mhm.
photographs and I paint a lot from photographs, and especially my cityscapes. With cars and people moving and trucks and a lot of action, a lot of energy. You can't get that painting plein air. But plein air gives you the ability to observe nature in person and observe, temperatures and edges and color and the subtleties of color. Because photographs will take all the darks, group them all together, make them darker, and take all the lights and blow them out. So you don't really get an accurate image to
I
paint
always
off.
think that gray or black as you look into a window or under a tree. You have to be outside to know what that is.
Yes, yeah. And the other thing I want to say is that my plein air work, my studio work, looks much like my plein air work.
Mm-hmm.
There's not really that much of a difference. They sort of sort of meld into one another.
And,
So
and
so it's very important.
yeah, I can see that. And how have you focused to that urban scape? What brought you to kind of?
Well, it's a kind of a funny story, and I can tell it to you. I was taking a workshop in Sedona with an artist, a well-known landscape painter, and he told us we liked his work. And Stephanie and I went there and took the workshop. And he told us before we come out to bring a flash drive and bring some examples of our work. And then he was going to have so he can see what kind of work we do. And then he was going to have a meeting with each and every artist at, on the last day of the workshop, and they'd be kind of like a consultation, and uh, about where he thinks we are, where we ought to go, and so forth and so on. So we did that. We took the 4-day workshop. In 4 days we painted plein air and we painted in the studio, and it was a good workshop. And then on the 5th day, sure enough, he took each student. It was like 15 students, and we all had our flash drives or pictures, and he said we could have the critique of our work either public or private. So some
Oh,
people did public in front of everybody, and some people did it private. So I went private, and we went to the little corner of the room, by ourselves, 2 chairs, a little table. And I pulled out my flash drive. He's plugged it into his laptop, and he's looking at it, and he's looking at the pictures, and he says, he's after he gets done looking, he looks at me. He says, he says, you know how to paint. He says, but I feel like you're like you just got out of art school, like you're a teenager. And I was 63 at the time. I'm 71 now. I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he says, well, like you're all over the place. He says, at your age, he says, you ought to focus on something. You can't be a master of everything. I said, oh, okay. You know, and I said, well, what do you, I don't know what, he said, well, what do you like to paint? I said, well, I said, I kind of like painting cityscapes. And even at that time, even though I wasn't focusing on it exclusively, that was the first thing out of my mouth. And he says, well, looking at your work, I think that's where you ought to go. So his prescription for me was paint cityscapes for 1 year until you're sick of them, and then that's how your work's going to progress, and you'll move on. And so that's what I did, but I never stopped.
yeah.
So
Can I just ask you a question about that? I love the story, because it got you to the cityscapes. But first of all, it sounds ageist to me, and also I wonder how you think about your sense of where you were. I mean, to me, we're a lot of us, because I'm right behind you there in age, that I'm thinking, hey, I am just starting out. And I also have, by the numbers, I could have another 20, 30 years, which is, a lifetime. So in artist life. So do you agree with what he said about at your age?
Well, yeah, and for me, it was good. I'm not sure if it's good for everybody, and I've told this story to a number of artists, and they didn't like it. They don't like that type of advice. I will say that I still go to the palette and chisel. I still go to open studios. I still paint the models every Saturday, sometimes Sunday, sometimes Tuesday. I take portrait classes still, so I didn't take it fully. I didn't stop doing everything. But I will say I haven't painted. I paint a landscape once in a while. But I enjoy painting the urban environment. I like the energy. I like the buildings. I like people in the urban environment. I like the movement. So yeah, and
And I
I
think
think
that advice to you about painting for a year till you get sick of them certainly gives you a good sort of leg up on those 10,000 hours, or
yeah.
the millions of gallons of paint you need to do before
Well, I
you're.
was painting a lot. I was painting a lot even when he gave me that advice. But I was spending about 85% of my time at the palette and chisel painting the models, painting nudes, clothes, figures, portraits, and a little bit of still life, and maybe 10% painting outside. I switched that around and I wasn't even painting in the studio at that time too much. I developed a studio practice and also started painting um, more plein air and more in the studio cityscapes. So it was almost a complete reversal.
So
But my
that
work my work did progress.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. It seems like that intentionality toward the cityscape really made a difference. And obviously
yeah,
now you're in galleries, so it made a difference.
well, this advice was given to me in 2011,
Yeah.
and now that I think about it, and in 2013, I had my first solo show at a pretty late age, and it was a successful show, all cityscapes. And I don't think I could have had that show had I not devoted myself to this body of work, and so it might not be for everybody, but for me, it worked out.
I think that makes a lot of sense from all kinds of perspectives. So let
Mhm.
me switch gears a little bit with you and ask you about your painting, and how do you approach a painting outdoors? How do you approach your composition and
Mhm.
your painting?
Right. Well, when I go outside, I do like Sargent did. Sargent, they say, he would go outside, step outside of his hotel, throw a coin over his shoulder, and where that coin landed, he'd set up his easel and paint. No, I don't do that. I have to, first of all, finding what I want to paint is important. I have to like what I want to paint. It has to inspire me. If I don't really like it, or if it's more of a struggle, then it's not going to be a successful painting. I have a better chance of having a successful painting if the subject matter is something that I'm interested in. If I see something in it that moves me. So what I look for when I get to a location, a site that I'm not familiar with, or even if I am familiar with it, I'll walk around and I'll take my little viewfinder. I don't have. I thought I had one around here. I do someplace, but it's a little square, like a little square with a window in it. And I look around and I look for different scenes that might be good. I also use my camera, my iPhone camera. You can take pictures that way. So I look for settings that I think would make a good composition. What makes a good composition? Contrast, interesting shapes, specific focal points. It could be the way the light's falling across a building. I sort of know it when I see it. And I think we all know it when we see it. What moves us. What
You
moves
you
someone else might not move me, and
you
vice versa.
almost always have one pop of color somewhere. The umbrella
Well,
behind you, the some kind of awning or something seems
yeah,
to.
I've never, that I've never really. I don't do that intentionally, but maybe unintentionally, I do look for that pop of color. And I'm sort of a grayish paint. I'm not a real colorist. I'm more of a gray tonalist for the most part. So and even my colors are sort of muted. So quite often, I might have what really pops color is they have non-color around it.
Yeah. And so thinking about this and moving to the kind of the end of your painting time, how do you spend your last 15 minutes, 20 minutes when you're thinking you're almost done? What do you look for in your painting?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I know I can tell you this. Maybe a better way to approach that is how I started painting,
Okay.
and and then how I end up where I end up in a painting. In the beginning stages, set up my composition, get my drawing. I mean, I'm not talking about drawing it out completely because I don't do that, but kind of get some reference points, my horizon line, where the verticals are, and get some some points that I can work with. And then, once I get that and I'm comfortable with the proportions and everything, then I can go a little bit quicker, and but stay thin, lay in, get the board covered. I paint on panel, and then maybe start adding more color, and then start developing the painting and slowing down. So I think what I'm building to is the last part of the painting. I will really be at a slow stage, and try not to destroy what I've done. Try to keep my darks dark, not put too much information in. Try to keep it simple. I start out simply with big shapes and then just put in as much information that is needed. So in the last 15 minutes, I might be destroying some edges. Maybe I got like some edges that are too hard. I do a lot of destruction in my painting. I do it either destruction with a palette knife or with a rag. And I find I've even painted paintings with rags, which I learned from Scott in a workshop. Took a workshop with him, and he came to the class, and there was like 20 of us in the class, and he had a big brown paper bag, and he said, "Okay, guys," and he dumped his brown paper bag in the ground, and it was like 150 pieces of cloth, this big white cloth. He says, "Everybody grab a handful," and those were our brushes. Well, you can't make a hard edge with a rag. So I mean, we're actually rolling it up, and I really liked the painting I got that day, and it was kind of like an eye opener.
Yeah, that's cool.
And not everything has to be, because in nature we don't look. So I try to, like, getting back to your question, maybe soften some edges, maybe sharpen some edges, maybe put down some more solid paint. Just kind of like step back, and most importantly, step back. Get
Yeah.
away from being right on top of the painting.
Yeah, thanks. That's great.
Mhm.
I'm wondering what advice you have for painters besides those great tips. Do you have any other advice for people getting into painting? And
Yeah, well, as far as plein air painting is concerned, I mean, there's so much, there's so many things to learn, as you know. But I would say, I do teach plein air painting a couple of times at the palette and chisel. So I've been doing it for like 8 or 9 years. So I've had a lot of students come through my classes.
I'm
So
one.
yeah, and you've done great, Mary. You've worked so hard on your painting, and you've come so far.
Thank you.
And yeah, and I would say that some of the most reoccurring problems that I see is with their drawing, with the students' drawing, that they don't have their proportions down, and perspective. Perspective, especially in cityscapes, 1 point and 2 point perspective is very important. So I would say some advice would be to maybe get a book on perspective, maybe take a class on perspective, and not to become an architectural illustrator by any means, but to have just some basic knowledge of where vanishing points are, where the lines and where your verticals, all go to your vanishing point, 1 point, 2 point perspective, and so on. It's not that complicated, and it can take your paintings a long way. When I first started plein air painting, I had a hell of a time with perspective, and my streets looked like they were all going uphill, And I was fortunate because I have an in-house architect. Stephanie was an architect. So she would always, and I go, no, you can't be right. But she was, totally right. I mean, I looked like I was looking from a second floor window. My streets were all going uphill. Anyways, the drawing, the perspective, good materials, good paint, and most importantly, good brushes. I've had students come to my classes with brushes that were rock hard. I mean, you can basically use them as a chisel. So you want you to keep your nice, soft, supple brushes, decent paint, and a good surface to paint on. I sort of steer people away from the cotton panels that you can buy. I would say what I do is I buy masonite boards from artisan craftsmen here in Chicago or whatever art store you want to buy them for. You can cut them yourself. And I use golden gesso, and I coat my boards, 2 or 3 coats with a brush, and it dries very quickly. It's a great surface to paint on.
Yeah.
But whatever surface you paint on, more of a quality surface is beneficial.
Do you use a different surface for your studio paintings versus your plein air paintings?
In the studio paintings, like this painting behind me is painted on a cradle panel. It's it's an inch. It's birch plywood, and it's got like here I can show you. This is the painting, and this is the side of it, and this is the back of it.
Oh, great.
So it's birch panel, and these are pre-made, and what I do is I use the golden gesso, gesso them the same way. So it's sort of the same surface. I have painted on linen. I don't paint on can. I like a hard surface because I'm a rough guy when I paint. I mean, I use a lot of tools that are like construction tools.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do a lot of scraping and hitting, and a stretched canvas wouldn't take the abuse.
Yeah, that makes sense. It feels like a perfect time for you to show us your studio. Can we come back and talk when you show us other things that you use, other equipment, or just take us around your studio? Can you do that?
Yeah. Okay. Let me.
Well,
undo
while you're
this.
doing that, I'm just going to put in a word for the class at the Palette and Chisel, Bob Krajewski's perspective class that made such a difference for me, and knowing the difference between atmospheric perspective and that other architectural perspective. So
I think that'd be great. I hear he's a great teacher, and I hear his class is really good.
I went to him after you told me I needed to learn to draw. So, but that class, the fundamentals class and the perspective class, has changed my life. Anyway, please tell us about your.
So, well, this is, I don't know if can you see okay?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. So, this is, I'll kind of just give you like a roundabout thing here, and just kind of, it's basically one room.
You have a fancy easel too, right? Can you go back to your easel?
Yeah, sure. So I have I saw Christine Bodie's video, which was really great. She's a great painter. And we have the same easel. This is a Hughes Model 14.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about this easel is it's got a weighted system.
Yeah.
And with pulleys. It's an interesting story about the guy who designed it. He had a friend who was a abstract painter. The guy who makes them is not an artist, but his friend was like, doing big paintings, and he'd have to like unclamp them, move them up to paint the bottom, unclamp them, move them down to paint the top. And he says, "Can you design me something?" And this guy who owns the company designed this easel, and he was using coffee cans as weights filled with sand, and now so you can sit, and it moves all the way down, moves all the way up.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we're seeing that.
And then you can go this way. I mean, you can do some really big paintings on this. And then it's got these weights, that you put in behind.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's great. This is the 4000, Model 4000.
Is that how much it costs?
No, if you want to know the price, I think this one was about 2,100, I think, plus shipping. But
Yeah.
he's got some smaller ones too. You need a pretty tall ceiling because it goes up. I don't know if you can see this. It goes up really high.
Yeah, move the, actually, all we're seeing is your painting. There you go. You have to,
Okay.
yeah, so we can see the ceiling. There you go.
Yeah, it goes up our ceiling.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's that. And then this is where I paint. I've got my little paint table, and there I have,
Your monitor.
drawers with paints and tools and my monitor. There's another monitor over there where I work on different things in Photoshop, and
Yeah.
then this is the monitor I paint off of, and there's another table there. So it's a pretty compact space, and then lots of paintings all over the place, and more paints back there and boards and
I noticed that as we were setting up that you have some kind of covering over your skylights. Did you do that just for lighting?
yeah, because the lighting. So I have in the studio I have 4 banks of spots
Yep.
you can see, and each bank is on a separate switch, so I
Oh,
can turn I can control the lighting.
yeah.
Plus I have this tray lighting. You can see that going up
Yeah.
and on that reflects off the ceiling. And everything is like 5,000 K lighting. So it's like daylight lighting. And
Yeah.
it works quite well. Um, I shared a studio with Stephanie. It's not that big, but we're kind of crammed in here. This is Stephanie's space over here.
Well, we'll get
And
to see more of her
you'll
space.
see more of hers. So we won't focus on Stephanie. And then we have a sink. And then, so
Yeah.
that's more it, for
And,
that. And
and you took it,
then
this is your master bedroom, right? That you kind of,
so this is a single family home that we live in, and it's a when we designed the home, we knew this was going to be an art studio. This is the master bedroom,
yeah.
but it's a studio. If we ever sell the house, we'll have to put a bathroom in and make it, turn it back. But we also have a basement where we do our framing, and then we have a workshop down there, for storage and more paintings, and yeah.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
So
this is terrific. Thank you for the.
I'll get you back on there.
Oh, good. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Well,
Okay.
Errol, just to kind of close up, first of all, thank you for the tour. That was
My pleasure. It's been a lot of
really
fun.
interesting. What's coming up for you in terms of you have a class I know coming up that I think is full, but you can tell us about that, and then exhibits.
Mm-hmm. So I teach plein air painting twice a year at the Palette and Chisel, and my class in June 6th and 7th, I'll be teaching plein air. I still call it plein air 101, but it's actually open to all levels. But that class is full. I'll have another class coming up sometime in September, late, probably early October, actually, because Stephanie and I have a 2-person show we're going to have at the Palette and Chisel. She'll be exhibiting her still lifes, and I'll be exhibiting my cityscapes. And so I'm, working on getting paintings ready for that show.
Oh, that's
And
great.
yeah.
And what's the opening date for the?
Okay, so the Palette and Chisel show, it opens September 5th. Actually, the general opening will be September 6th. It'll be a Saturday opening, and it'd be great if everybody could come.
Yeah.
If you're not, I'm on Facebook. If you're not friends with me, you can friend me because I put announcements on there, or Instagram,
Okay, good.
and so there'll be announcements, and people will be able to find out. So hopefully people can come by and see it. It'll be fun.
I'm coming. Yeah. It's great because it seems like you and Stephanie's have your show followed by Barbara Herring, another plein air painter. Chicago is right after yours, and Christina
Yes,
follows hers.
I know. Yeah,
We have a nice little run there.
we're taking over the Palette and Chisel.
That's great.
Those would be all great shows.
Yeah. Well, Errol, I don't know if you have any parting comments, thoughts.
No, just it's been a pleasure, and just keep on painting. And I mean, that's what it's about, right? You know, and yeah, I do have a parting comment.
Okay.
I have up here. Can you see that? I have different little notes up here.
Yeah.
And just little. So I like this one here. You know, remember the master has failed more times than the beginners ever tried. Embrace your failures, for failures are the building blocks of success. So I
Nice.
think that I sometimes, you know, I look at that because, you know, for I think all of us, no matter what level we're at, either beginner, intermediate, or advanced, there are, you know, it's what we do is challenging, you know, and you know, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and you know, it's not always, we don't, at least I don't always get what I want, and you know, but there's something to be learned from every you know, every painting that we do, you know, and with that.
All right. Well, with that, then we will say goodbye. And thank you so much,
Okay.
Errol.
Okay. Mary,
Thank
this has been great. Thanks a lot.
Oh, you're
Thank,
welcome.
and thanks for all you do for the
Oh,
pageant. I mean, for the plein air painters of Chicago.
oh, it's my
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.